And I will also just associate myself with the the framework that President Ramaphosa did outline for the G20.
While Mark Carney was at the United Nations, he appeared before an ESG committee. I'm here to tell you that that could be very significant to Canada, but it absolutely exposes Mark Carney's true intentions. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. As I was saying, while Carney was at the United Nations, he took time to sit down for the ESG committee, and everyone was a little bit baffled by not only the language that he used, but why he would bother to do this. And I want everyone to understand that what he said was actually a little more dire. However, before I explain to you how what he said it could be very, very dire for Canada, but it absolutely tips the hand of Mark Carney, let's just establish two things beforehand, because everything that he said, though a lot of people were like, I don't know what you just said. If you take it in context of these 2 points I'm about to show you, it makes a lot of sense. And then when it makes a lot of sense, you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is not good for Canada. First, let's establish what ESG is. It's environment, social, and governance. That's what the United Nations calls it. And here's a definition I got from the Google AI. Is a framework for financial institutions and companies to assess a company's stability and ethical practices by examining its impact on the environment and social responsibility and its corporate governance. The concept was popularized by a 2004 UN-backed report titled Who Cares Wins, and is now a globally recognized standard for responsible investing and business conduct. That's important because Mark Carney, what he's trying to do, or what he was doing before he became prime minister, or more accurately, what he was doing before Donald Trump took office, was gathering all of the Northern Hemisphere's bankers together to say, we have all of this money, and if you don't do business the way we demand it, if you don't only do industries the way we demand it, we're not going to lend you any money. Now, the other thing to remember, I mean, there's a couple of factors more that I probably should have said, but it's okay. The other thing to remember is this book right here that was written by Mark Carney. And the tagline, of course, is called Values, right? So, you know, what's your value, right? Not what you're worth, but you know, what do you support, right? And then down here, building a better world for all. Because the guy who jet sets around and lets 1/3 of Canadians do without food somehow is building a better world. Anyway, in this build a better world for all, he essentially echoes the sentiment of ESG with an additional ripple of controlling the banks. Because by controlling the banks, he will not lend you any money to start a business unless, if you don't do it his way, then you're not going to be able to borrow any money. And his idea behind the GFANZ, the Glasgow Financial Association, was that he would be able to have this massive bulwark of money lenders who would all do it his way, or do it the way of the ESG. Now, Donald Trump took office and removed all of the environmental rules. And of course, everybody in banking knows that all the money is in the States. Even Mark Carney, who has 70% of his companies down in the United States, right? 70 or 75% or something like that. Most of the companies that he had were in the United States. So he even acknowledges that the environmental rules are costing him money. And so you might say, well, why would he do that then if he knows it's costing him money? Because he has money. He's not after money. He's after control. He wants power. And that's the thing that people are overlooking. I mean, let's be straightforward. Most people would have Mark Carney's money and they would simply retire. They'd be like, you know what, man, I'm just going to sit on the beach for, the next 20 years. I'm good. But some people have this desire to be Napoleon, right? And they need to try and take over everything. And that's really what a lot of people overlook, this mental aspect of trying to have more power. And by having control of the financial institution, Mark Carney now has the power over every business, big or small. Those two elements, when you understand that this whole entire committee is set up around making sure businesses conduct themselves in a way that the UN agrees with, and Mark Carney's book that says, not only do we feel that you have to do it our way, but we are going to have control of all of the purse strings, so you'll never get to borrow a nickel unless you do exactly what we tell you to do. Those two elements are important when you hear this 3-minute speech to the United Nations. I would say a thing before we get into this. I don't believe Mark Carney realized he was going to have a limited amount of time to address the committee, so he came with a lot of paperwork, but when they told him that, he started to jump around from point to point to ensure that he got what he wanted to say on the record.
The central role of international finance in scaling up private finance for emerging and developing economies is what I want to touch on today. And that's something we focused on at the G7, but really it's been the work of this table and more broadly. I want to salute the leadership of the World Bank, the IMF, the regional development banks in moving this forward.
So we can see right out of the gate, he's all about globalist agenda with the money.
And there was an element of that at the G7. But the way I'm going to organize my thoughts, 3 points, 4 points actually, around building that system, financial system for our grandkids, again, drawing on the intervention of the managing director and the secretary general earlier.
We hear that from the far left all the time, right? It's all about the children. It's never just that I'm doing it because I want control. And then what you heard him say when he went to the managing director and the chair of the committee was just brown nosing.
First thing we need is to recognize that we need to use scarce dollars to the maximum effect.
Now, we hear him say that in the Canadian addresses all the time, right? We're going to take small public dollars and use it to maximum effect. Of course, he's saying scarce dollars right now because he's talking about Trinidad. Well, who did he meet with before this meeting? Trinidad. He met with Bermuda or Bahamas, I think, or Barbados, sorry, and Jamaica. And then he also met with Iceland, who lends a lot of money, Iceland.
This isn't just about bigger volumes, it's about using scarce public dollars to maximum effect.
Just like he's trying to tell Canadians he wants to do. So here we see that the truth of Mark Carney's investment plan. He wants to make Canada ESG.
And that is catalyzing financial instruments using risk mitigation tools to better allocate risk between the public and private sector. I will just refer for speed to the agenda of the Private Sector Investment Lab and what the World Bank has been doing on risk management.
All of that to say is that the lab and the World Bank is talking about mitigating the risk, not to the country, not to the taxpayer. No, they want you to mitigate the risk to their investment from these bankers. They want to know that they can mitigate the risk, and what steps are they taking in an effort to mitigate that risk. And of course, when they say mitigate the risk, what they usually mean is we're going to take control of this entire operation and we're going to take the bulk of the profits, and we might give you, a little trickle down to your economy, but in the end, it's really not going to make any difference. So you're going to have to get prepared to tell your people they're doing it all for the grandchildren.
Second point is crowding in institutional capital through originate to distribute models. There's a lot of words there. What it basically means is recycling the balance sheets of our international financial institutions. So they are there catalyzing the new lending. Once it matures, it's parked off to other holders that can hold it for the long term. And it's all about action, new action.
So what he said there was that we need you to give us the money so that when we finally make some money back, we can give it over there in the corner, and then you can take that money, you get your original investment back, and then it'll be that money that starts to generate new action. We'll take control of the entire island of Jamaica, no problem at all.
At the MDBs. The third point is
MDBs, multilateral development banks. These are the guys that you go to when you want to borrow money for a, nation-building project.
Strengthening the structures, processes, governance of the institutions. To put it into plain words, the shareholders should be looking at key performance indicators that are directly tied, of course, to the Sustainable Development Goals, but also absolute volumes of capital that are moving.
Absolute volumes of capital that are moving. So whose money is going where?
And in some cases, it's not about lending. It's actually about technical assistance.
Meaning we're going to step in and tell you what you must do, or we're going to be targeting you.
It's making capital flow possible. So all of those activities that catalyze in flows towards the SDGs.
All of that flows towards the SDGs. Get it? Every penny. That's it. No matter what you do, no matter what idea you have, if it doesn't fit into Mark Carney's vision of SDGs, that capital will be shut down. There will be no investment made from that capital. There will be no, and so on and so forth. I mean, you get it, right? It's just essentially blocking you from ever doing anything with your money.
I will reference the work that has been done and needs to be completed on a cross-border carbon market, which could
Cross-border carbon market means that you're going to be paying a carbon tax on anything, or you have to refuse a product or add duties to the product if it's made in a non-carbon friendly environment. So if you want to buy it from the States, no, you can't do that because it's not made carbon friendly. If you want to buy it from China, no, you can't do that because it's not made carbon friendly, though I'm pretty sure Mark Carney's going to find a loophole for China.
Close 1/3 of the climate finance gap between now and 2035.
1/3 of the climate finance. He feels that he can take over 1/3 of all the investment in the next 10 years.
And I will also just associate myself with the framework that President Ramaphosa did outline for the G20, which is more comprehensive than what I've just said.
Now, that was a very important slip for Canadians to hear. I will associate myself with what this fella from the G20 had to say. Now, I will associate Canada. I mean, he's sitting there. He's got the Order of Canada pin on. He's Prime Minister of Canada. He's got Canada right in front of him. The entire room is the United Nations. He's representing Canada as he sits there, but he says, I will associate myself. Because in the back of his mind, it's all about his companies. It's not about our country. It's not about any country. It's all about how much his company can take control of every person's industry and every company and every investment anywhere, ever.
Last point I'll make is that at the G7, there were a few instruments that were launched that build on some of the general points that I just made. Billions of dollars in new financing through the IADB and the Caribbean Development Bank.
IADB is Inter-American Development Bank. It's basically Mexico and South. The other bank is for the Bahamas, Bermuda, Jamaica, all of those. That's why he spent the time meeting with all of those leaders.
A structure where a number of countries came together called SCALE, which is Scaling Capital for Sustainable Development.
There we go again, scale, right? He loves that word. Oh, we're going to do everything at scale. We're going to catalyze at scale. Really, all he's trying to say is that if it's sustainable development, if it's something that I agree with, then it's fine. If it's not, then you're not going to get a nickel from me.
The point of this, it's measured in billions, but really the point is it's a template. It's a template for putting in place those general points that I made. It has, as its name suggests, an ability to scale. And if I may close on this, Chair, there is an enormous gap. We know that. But the gap in terms of financial technology and the solutions has closed. The question is whether we're going to deploy them and scale. Thank you.
So what he's saying there is that, yeah, everybody, there's a lot between poverty, but can we get our tentacles into those countries? Are we going to deploy them at scale? So he's trying to make the United Nations follow his GFAN's agenda. He's trying to make the United Nations do it in the way that he wants the world to do it. So he's trying to get the United Nations to go back to their very individual countries, or to get the United Nations to put pressure on moneylenders and, in development banks, international development banks too, and specifically, so that he can get control of the Caribbean area and get control of Central and South America with financial, by telling them that, the money that you want to borrow to develop a dam or a mine or a railway or a pipeline all has to come from us. And if it doesn't come from us, anybody else that does it to you, you're breaking the rules and you're out of the club. Oh, of course, he leaves out how he controls all of Brazil's largest pipeline, 100% control of that. Because it's not about development, guys. It's about control. It's not about how much money he can make. It's about how much power he can have. Again, you have to consider the mindset of Napoleon as opposed to the mindset of Scrooge McDuck. You have to see that in their mind, it's all about having the power. It's all about being in control. It's all about being the center. It's not about anything other than that. It's not about, I got it really good. Let me live a good life. They don't care about that. In their minds, it's just all about how they need to be admired, worshipped, or if failing all of that, they need to have the ability to force people to listen to them. And that's important for Canada, because he didn't sit down at this meeting as Prime Minister of Canada. He sat down at this meeting as a banker who's got control of some people who want money, and now he's desperately begging the United Nations to support his decisions. He's desperately trying to convince this committee in 5 minutes or less to do it his way. I mean, the people that are seated around him are actually representatives of some pretty high-end banks. That's why he kept pointing IMF, international, he kept pointing at all the heads of these banks. What are they doing in the room? Why are they in the room? Well, because it's not about countries. It's not about making things better. It's about industry and power and control. And that's why what sounded like a bunch of gibberish and disconjointed thoughts. Because in reality, he had 5 minutes to tell the whole wide world, listen, this is what we need to do to make my book come true and to make all of my Brookfield investments to really, really, really pay out. He didn't mention Canada once. The word Canada never left his mouth. We can hear how he says much of what he just said to the United Nations to Canada. Catalyze, or we're going to take small dollars and make them big. All you got to do is give all your control to the investment bankers. And then when you listen to what he said in Europe, he's like, no, well, there's a lot of infrastructure type people that have money that could be investing in Canada. So what he wants to do is give control of these industries to these banks so that when you try to get out of it, they have all the money. And he's trying to tie Canada to that. So don't go being fooled by him trying to say that he's worried about investment in infrastructure projects. Don't be fooled by any of that. He doesn't want a single thing to happen in this country that doesn't come in line with ESG. And more importantly, it's not like he wants you to get involved in ESG that Trump is paying for. It's not like he wants me to be paying for ESG. No. He wants you to be doing ESG that only him and his friends are funding. Only the IMF and the other bank that he kept mentioning, the development bank. Only those guys. They are the ones that have to tell us what this ESG is. And if you're a young guy and you get struck by a flash of brilliance, and you got this amazing idea, and it's once in a lifetime. But if it's not ESG, if it doesn't conform to what Mark Carney wants, nope, doesn't matter. You can sit there in your grass hut in your little shanty town, and you will never get that off the ground because you did not conform, you did not comply with the social governance of me and my very rich banker friends who have now turned most of Northern Ontario into a private game reserve where no one's allowed to go. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a man who is not talking about being part of Canada. He's talking about trying to forward his own personal and private agenda. That's why he kept speaking in the first person instead of saying, I want to associate Canada with what he said at the G20. No, he said, I want to associate myself with what that guy said. And of course, that was to make sure that everybody understands that what he means is it was already said once, so I can stay inside of my 5-minute time limit. All right, I hope that cleared it all up for you. I'm going to wrap here. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.